So we are pleased to welcome Dr. Sandra Kersten. Dr. Kersten is the director of the Division of Nutritional Sciences here in the College of Human Ecology and the Schleifer Family Professor at Cornell University. Dr. Kersten received his Master's of Science degree in Human Nutrition from, I did not do this properly. How do I pronounce this name? Wageningen University in 1993, and his Ph.D. in Nutritional Biochemistry from Cornell University in 1997. Research in his group aims to elucidate the molecular mechanisms that underlie the regulation of lipid metabolism in the liver and adipose tissue during fasting. His research is driven by the notion that a detailed understanding of how humans respond to fasting will create openings for designing effective, preventative, and therapeutic strategies for overnutrition and its pathological sequelae. Dr. Kersten's main scientific achievements are the elucidation of two important molecular mechanisms that determine how the liver and adipose tissue process lipids during fasting. He has received well over 25 research grants from national and international funding bodies and has participated in numerous national and international research consortia. Dr. Kersten has pioneered online education in nutrition and was the first in Europe to launch a massive open online course in nutrition. The course was classified as one of the 250 most popular online courses of all time. Please welcome Dr. Sandra Kersten.
All right. Well, thank you, Carly, for that wonderful introduction. Thanks, everybody, for joining. And yeah, enjoy your lunch, first of all. Well, this is, of course, a special setting. We have a very diverse audience. So what I've tried to do is put together a presentation that hopefully appeals to all of you to some extent. What I'll try to do is tell you a little bit more about where I'm from, what my background and my ideas are, but also then, of course, move to my main role, which is to lead DNS and share with you some of the history of DNS. Actually, we're at a very special moment because this year we're celebrating the 50-year anniversary of the Division of Nutritional Sciences. And we actually had a great celebration on Tuesday. I will use that to then lead us towards the future and share with you some of the ideas that I have and that I'm trying to currently work on and put to practice. So that's what's planned for the next half an hour, 45 minutes. So a little bit about my history. So as Carly said, I was originally trained. I'm also originally from the Netherlands, and actually came to Cornell in January from the Netherlands. So I grew up in the area that's called Veldhoven, Eindhoven. It may not be familiar unless you are from there. But it's known for two major companies, Philips, which most people know from light bulbs originally and from VCRs originally. They don't exist anymore, but CD players was actually invented over there. Nowadays, it's all medical equipment, so MRIs, that kind of stuff. Sometimes you see TVs or vacuum cleaners, whatever. ASML is now the big company. It's actually the only company in the world that makes the machines that other companies use to make chips. So they have a huge monopoly, and it has been part of some geopolitical negotiations between the Netherlands and China and the US because they have such a huge monopoly in that. So that's the major employer in that area. My father was employed at the local university, but all my other classmates were employed by their fathers, and mothers were employed by Philips. So I went to Wageningen University in 1989, which is about an hour away. And that, I don't know if you've heard of that university. It's a university especially known for its focus in agriculture and anything related to food, environment, but also soil, nature, the air, and everything that relates to that. So they're very much into the Earth and how we can make sure that this Earth is inhabitable or will be habitable for generations to come. I came to Cornell in '93, which for me was, I didn't have a culture shock when I came in January. A tiny bit, not really. But I did certainly get one in '93, although, as it says before, I was infatuated with the US as a teenager. So I basically watched every TV program, every show that was out there to get a better idea what the US was like before I got here. And so, you know, I watched Miami Vice from the first to the last episode, and then I got to Ithaca. I was like, that's not the same. So, but anyway, I was reasonably well prepared within boundaries, of course. So, of course, I changed a lot in the meantime. Funny picture. That's what I looked like pretty much when I came here. Amazing what can happen to a person. But anyway. So after I spent a great time here working in Savage together with my advisor, Dr. Noah Noy, I left Cornell to pursue a postdoc. Actually went back to Europe and went to Switzerland, Lausanne. If you've ever been, I can greatly recommend it. It's located close to Geneva, right next to Lake Geneva with the view on the Alps. It's absolutely stunning. It's a great place. And after a couple of years, I went back to my original university in Wageningen to start a sort of a career, to start up a lab. At that point, there was no molecular research going on, and that actually was part of the reason why I came here, to sort of learn and to sort of acquire those skills. But then we set up a new laboratory, which has been growing ever since and was, yeah, pretty successful, I think. So I also then got a junior faculty position, then moved up progressively and became a professor in 2011. And from 2014 to actually December last year, I was chair of a particular unit. And for 4 years, I was also chair of a bigger unit. Basically, it's very similar to DNS. More than 30 faculty working in all different areas of nutrition. So in that sense, even though clearly DNS is different and the whole system is different, in that sense, I was reasonably well prepared, at least I thought, for the job up here as a director. I've been coming back and forth actually to Cornell over all that time in between. So if, for example, between 2008 and 2012, me and my family would stay here for 2 months in the summer. Would actually rent a house on Hanshaw Road, and I would interact with the faculty and some of the students during those summer months. So that was always great. So my kids know Cornell from when they were little. So that's also, yeah, created a great connection. So a little bit about my research. So Carly already mentioned fasting. We can also call it starvation. So the idea behind my research is that there's an awful lot that we can learn from understanding how humans evolved, because ultimately how we, under the circumstances under which we evolved sort of dictate how our body and how our metabolism is wired. You know, all our functions are ultimately driven by what happened during evolution, and how certain functions were lost or gained because of certain selective pressure. So starvation was certainly very important during evolution, whether you're a chicken or a frog or a human person. I mean, food wasn't always available. And certainly for human or for mankind, the same was true. So we need to be aware that actually the way we are wired metabolically allows us to cope with periods of fasting or starvation quite well. We can last up to a month without eating anything at all. And if you have a little bit extra, it could be 2 or more. So actually our systems are very well adapted to these type of circumstances. The trouble is nowadays, of course, we have food available all the time. So these systems that were in a way supportive during evolution are now kind of working against us. So from that perspective, I feel it's very important to better understand what these systems are like, how our metabolism is wired, what's going on when you subject human metabolism to fasting. And from that, identify some of the key pathways or processes that we can then potentially target, manipulate to make us healthier. That's a little bit the overall idea. Just very briefly, and this is not a deep scientific talk, but what happens during fasting, essentially what you need to do is you got to make sure that you rely on the stores that you have available, because there's nothing else coming in. And our stores are in our so-called fat depot, or our fat tissue. So they are very important, and the energy from that tissue is mobilized. And then there is the liver, which is sort of the hub. You see all the arrows coming or going from the liver. This is where the energy is sort of flowing through and ultimately converted to provide other tissues, such as the brain and the heart and muscles, with appropriate fuel. So all of this is very much regulated. And in my research, I'm really trying to understand how that regulation is, especially at the molecular level. All right. A little bit I wanted to mention about about my background and my research. And currently, I'm setting up a lab in Weil Hall to continue that research. So let's then move to the division. As I told you, division is celebrating its 50-year anniversary this year. And on this occasion, we, and I should say especially our colleagues from communications at CHE, helped with setting or creating a video that I'm happy to share with you today. All right, so yeah, I think it pretty much captures what DNS is all about. So I'm very, very happy with the results. So thanks again for the great work. So as I said, DNS is celebrating its 50-year anniversary. The college actually is celebrating its 100th-year anniversary. Of course, Cornell overall goes back to 1865. So this picture gives a little bit of the history from nutrition. I actually took this slide. I think Mal made it a while ago. But it gives the sort of major landmark moments over the years from like I said, the original foundation of Cornell to different schools that have been established. At the bottom here in 1925 at the U.S. College of Home Economics, which already had the departments of foods and nutrition. A school of nutrition was established during the Second World War, but ultimately everything came together. Mal actually gave a wonderful overview on Tuesday describing the events that led up to that. And ultimately in 1974, the division was founded. So we are an intercollegiate unit, primarily situated here in the human ecology, but also some of our faculty have appointment in CALS. Like I said, we had a great program on Tuesday where we celebrated our anniversary, and also did that by actually honoring some of our former graduates who came back to tell us a little bit about their careers, also to serve as an inspiration for our current graduate students to give an idea of what a Ph.D. or a master's degree in the division actually can lead up to. So we have people from different areas, people that pursued academic careers, or a career in industry or in nutrition policy. So I think it was a nice mix that really illustrates the wide scope of our division, and in general the wide scope of the field of nutrition in general. And the highlight was, of course, I'm pointing out Mal numerous times. He's sitting up here in front, and people don't even or didn't notice that. But I think it was really cool that Mal, who founded the division 50 years ago, was actually also able to deliver sort of a keynote on how that all happened 50 years ago. And yeah, we still pick the fruits from his efforts. So just very briefly, I mean, 50 years is a long time, but a lot has happened. Of course, I was only part of it for a while, but what you can see is that, of course, there is a tremendous scientific output, 3,700 papers that were published, lots of citations that were gathered, a lot of work that was being published. I'm showing you some of the main papers that collected most of the citations. Of course, this is just the top 5. There's many more, but it illustrates some of the work that has been done in a division and that had a particular impact in the field. This picture, which I actually also prepared in preparation for an external review that we have to prepare later this year, shows our most prolific authors. Of course, usually the longer you stay around, the more you publish. So there is a pretty good correlation with age here. That's okay. But it shows a little bit, how much people have done, how many papers people have published during all the years that they were with us, or still are with us. Well, as I mentioned, the division is pretty wide in scope. We look at nutrition from various angles, from very molecular to more economical or behavioral, and that's all under one roof, which I think is one of the strength and uniqueness of the division, which is then also evident in the areas that we published. Is sort of this picture sort of provides an overview of what areas we mainly leave our mark in terms of publications. So it goes from more the dietetics area to more cell biology, or even environmental occupational health, as they would call it. It's better described as public health. So just very briefly, I mean, if you look at what has happened in those 50 years, there's so many landmark findings or really accomplishments that I could highlight. So it's really difficult to sort of pick a few, but there's a few that I can mention here. I think the division has been really key in guiding domestic and international research and practices in nutrition surveillance and monitoring. The U.S. household food insecurity measure has been something that the division has had an active role in the development. Breastfeeding, we've had a program in maternal and child nutrition for a very long time, still very active, and where certainly the division has left an important mark. And that continues on the next line, our education, our program. We've trained many graduates who then went on to great careers in this area, in various forms. And also just to recognize that behavioral science and social sciences have an important role in nutrition in general. Nutrition originally was a science that emerged from the discovery of the vitamins and minerals, which was very chemical. But at a certain point, people realize it's not just about that. You know, we can solve nutrition or the problems that people have with nutrition by just focusing on what the structure of vitamin B12 is. We also need to look at why people eat, how they eat, sort of the context of diet. And that's really exemplified in the research that our faculty is engaged in, not now only, but also going back a long time. Now, also at the human molecular side, a lot has happened. And again, I'm not able to provide a full overview because so much has been done by so many people. But particularly through the work of Donald Silversmith, who was one of the early faculty as well, a lot of key insight have been gained in the process of atherogenesis, which is the process that leads to the clogging of your arteries as you age. Barb Strupp and Rick Canfield have done wonderful work on the relationship between lead exposure in children. And we all know now that lead is really bad for children. So we need to remove old pipes that contain lead. And they have importantly contributed to some of the key studies that led to that insight. Very basic work on how cells work and how genes are transcribed and how those processes are regulated. Fatty acids, we know omega-3 fatty acids, you probably are aware of these, common components in fish oil and other types of oil. They're uniquely metabolized, and some of that key work went on actually from the basement of, not anymore, the basement now has a different purpose. But there used to be a lab there, and they did fantastic work led by Tom Brenna on the metabolism of fatty acids. Also, of course, other nutrients, cysteine, folate, and then much more. Like I said, I'm certainly not able to highlight everything. I just want to just give you some of the key findings made in those years. That also culminated in, like I said, publications, but also books. I was just referring before, actually, it talked about Martha's book and Marie's book that sort of sprouted from the course that Martha taught for many years, which I actually TA'd for a while. And as I was reminiscing, it's, I mean, we all have to be TA. And one of the memories that I had is that I had to sit up front, the first row, and change the transparencies for the lecture. But then one day I had a pretty late night, and the night before probably was also pretty late. So I kind of dozed off in front of a class, I don't know, 200 students. So she had to remind me that it was time to put on the next lecture numerous times, the next transparency. Another book from Jerry Combs, and then more recently, a book by Mary Nessel and Mel Nessheim on Why Calories Count. So like I mentioned before, we had dedicated our anniversary symposium to the legacy of DNS, which I think is essentially a legacy of producing tons of outstanding graduates. And over the years, there are many. Over the years, we've awarded now close to 500 PhDs, well over 400 master's degrees. And all of these people, or a lot of them, have moved on to great careers, whether in academia or industry or in another type of organization. And I'm showing you some of the names, including some of our current faculty who have a history, including, for instance, Angela, at the division originally as a graduate student. Now, as we were preparing for this anniversary, we also put out a survey to get some input from our graduates on their schooling. These are the people that responded, and this gives an idea of where people are located. Like I said, we find a lot of people in academia pursuing an academic career. But at the same time, other people have ended up in government, in policy, in NGOs, and some in industry as well. And we had some great examples on Tuesday of somebody that used to work with Andre, and with Pat, and she is now working for a pet food company and really enjoying her time there. All right, so that was a little bit about the past. What about the future? Well, this is our mission, from cell society to that's a tongue breaker. I'm going to skip that one. We promote human health and well-being globally through excellence and leadership in research, education, and public engagement in nutritional science. So that's very general, but that's sort of, I guess, collects what we all are aiming for at a bigger level. So what does that mean? And this is something I've come up with, and I haven't really shared it. I think maybe with a few people. But the way I look at it, how do we get to that? So mission is sort of the bigger picture, and the vision is how do we pursue that? So I've summarized it to do good, feel good, and look good. So do good is essentially, that's our work, right? We want to do great work. We want to teach great classes. We want to produce fantastic research. We want to produce academic excellence or perform academically extremely well. But at the same time, that to me cannot be the only thing, right? I mean, things are connected. So I think it's important that people feel good. People need to be happy in their job. People need to enjoy their work. People need to enjoy working with others and being part of a bigger structure. So making sure that people are well-grounded and comfortable is, I think, the basis for being able to function well as in any type of job, whether it's in academia or elsewhere. So to make sure that we have a great community and a great relationship is key. So that's something I feel is part of what I would like to work on. And then look good, that sounds very superficial. But at the same time, I feel it's part of the whole package, right? I mean, it's the perception is there. You want, if you want to be perceived as being leading or outstanding, then you kind of need to present the whole package. So that means our facilities should be looking great. Our buildings should be looking great, so that we exude a level of excellence. So that's what I mean with look good. So then when it comes to strategy, what are the things that I'm focusing on? And I've written these down for myself to sort of almost hang above my bed to sort of stay focused on what are we aiming for? What is the long-term or what are the long-term goals and how do they align? So they're listed here. So thematic focus, partly shared and adaptable research infrastructure, inclusive culture and governance, and improve visibility. So I'll go through these one by one and elaborate on them a little bit more. So if you look at the field of nutrition, of course, there is a lot happening. And as I mentioned, the field has changed a lot from initial discovery of vitamins, 100 years ago to now. We're dealing with very different problems. We have a global malnutrition problem in still many parts of the world. Even in this country, people are malnourished in various forms. Part of that is nutrition related. Some of it can be political or for other reasons. But still, there is a role for us to play there. Overnutrition, that's something that certainly has grown certainly since the vitamins were discovered. It's a common problem now across the world and certainly also in this country. The nutrition equity problem, the fact that great foods are available, but they're not necessarily fairly distributed, and that access to good foods and nutrition isn't always guaranteed. So how can we make sure that's sort of resolved or at least addressed? And at the same time, if you look at how science advances, sometimes it's because new questions arise if they didn't exist before. So nobody worked on climate change until we saw that there was something like that going on. So that's a new problem that arose that triggers interest. That can happen, but at the same time, a lot of science or novel science is driven by new technology. So people are able to answer certain questions now because they have certain technologies available, which we weren't able to do a long time ago. People wanted to, but there is no technology, no way to address that. So I think it's important, and you see that all over, that you see that technology is driving a whole new field. Perfect example is the gut microbiome field. I don't know if you know about it, but it's all about what's happening with the microbes in our intestine. That field didn't exist, or was tiny before, let's say 2000, because they didn't know anything, they couldn't measure anything. And at that point, people could actually start sequencing the bacteria, and that field exploded. So purely driven by technology. So there's always new technologies that come up. So I think it's important for us to be on top of that and to really look out for these new type of technologies to try to sort of, break new boundaries or set new boundaries and make a difference. So what I felt was useful with our colleagues in DNS is to sort of do a little bit of a soul search to figure out where are we really good at, what are the areas that we excel in, and how can we redefine our focus in a way that really does justice to the work that everybody does, while at the same time providing, I think, a clear message to the outside world. These are the areas that we are excelling, and this is where we really want to continue. And this is actually the product of a retreat that we had in I think it was in February. And so we ended up with these areas. So nutrition for maternal and child, which shouldn't be a surprise for anybody who has been connected with the division in any shape or form, because this has been a stronghold for decades, and it still is. Nutrition for metabolic health. I mean, more and more of our faculty are involved in studies related to metabolism and disruptions in metabolism, which are often related to the overnutrition problem that I highlighted before. I talked about health equity. So there's several people in the division that really work in a more in that domain, how nutrition and foods can be properly distributed and can be available to a wide group of people. And finally, there's nutrition for precision health, which is very much a theme that's now being, well, it has been around for a while, but it's certainly getting a lot of attention, and certainly we are ideally positioned as a DNS to sort of capitalize on that and well, not just take a lead, but really to show what we have and what we can contribute. And I think that's working out really well. So these are the areas that we end up with. So that doesn't mean that we're not interested in doing anything that's outside these areas, but at least it helps us to also in external communication to be clear. Well, these are the areas that we really want to excel and advance and be different, if possible, from our colleagues and our competitors. So as part of that, one of the fun things that we did is we made a heat map. I don't know if people are used to dealing with heat maps, but essentially what this was is a way to sort of look at the faculty and have them indicate to what extent their effort can be put in the area of either metabolic health or maternal and child health or public health, health equity, or precision health. And the darker the color, the more they allocated their overall effort to that particular area. And you can see that some people actually are involved in all four areas, which is fantastic, and others are more focused on one particular area. But I think we fill up all the areas. Clearly, the first area, metabolic, is very well represented, which is fantastic. But at least it shows that yeah, nobody is working in isolation, and that's really what we're also trying to accomplish. Along those lines, of course, as people may know, I mean, as DNS started out, we at that point, I think we had 34 faculty in 1974. Currently, I think we're down to 23. So there's room for growth, and that's certainly an important role for me to sort of facilitate that and support that. So we actually have 2 openings out there that we are trying to draw attention to, one in human and nutrition and health, and the other one in nutrition and population health. So hopefully we'll get a lot of outstanding candidates and some new colleagues sometime next year. All right, well, the second element that was part of the strategy was a shared and adaptive research infrastructure. What do I mean with that? I think, well, what I'm trying to do, and which is already to a large extent present, is to create an infrastructure where people can have access to pretty much the best technology, and that the access is easy, right? So that you don't have to go externally. Well, you can still go externally, but if it's something that is of importance to a lot of people, you want to have it close by, and you want access not to be restricted in any form. So in our current setup, we have 3 what we could call units or parts that could be considered part of this sort of shared research infrastructure. We have the HMRU, which is located right here in this building, where we host all studies related to human subjects. So any volunteer that's partaking in any of our studies will come over here, and they can have their blood drawn or some other analyses done. But we have a centralized structure. I noticed Jenny sitting in the back. Hey, to host these volunteers and support the work of many of our faculty. What we also have is a nutritional chemistry laboratory where we have consolidated some of the analytical technology, although this is still in progress. Trying to bring together more of the expertise and also the equipment into one type of unit, so that it can be of benefit to more people and accessible to more people. And the last one is a molecular cellular laboratory. This covers a certain set of techniques which currently are spread out across the different labs, but ultimately part of that infrastructure would be consolidated into an individual lab, which we hope to establish on the 3rd floor after the renovations are completed, which is sort of slated for at least the first round is going to be done by the next summer, second round by next spring, and but hopefully by the summer we can already sort of take the next step in this and this ambition to create a laboratory where everybody can take advantage of the equipment. It's open for all members of DNS, and then really with the equipment that perhaps would be not available to individual members in their labs because of resources, but that we provide it as an overall service to all our faculty. And we already have those types of equipment. They're just currently spread out across different labs. So the next one is about inclusive culture and governance. So this is, of course, that's easier said than done. So how do you do that? And certainly that's it's something that requires work, and that's just not something I can do on my own. But what I'm trying to do is create a structure and an environment where everybody is welcome, everybody feels appreciated, and also has a chance to contribute. So what we have started earlier this month maybe as a little bit of as an experiment. We have to see how it's going, but we installed a so-called internal advisory board, and several of the members are actually here. The idea is to have sort of people from different parts of the division represented in one body to talk about things that matter to all of us, to ultimately, as I say, make DNS a great place to work, because that's ultimately what it's all about. So we want to go to work with a smile on our face. We want to leave work with a smile on our face, not because we were happy to go home because because it sucked. But because yeah, you had a great day. So what, of course, part of that is something that's, you know, something that you have, as individuals, have to take care of yourself. But it's also something that can be fostered by creating an environment where you feel welcome and you have great connections with your colleague, and you feel that you're heard. You know, you count, essentially. But again, it's an experiment, and hopefully yeah, it will be the stepping stone for more. But we'll see where that will lead us. Now, last is to improve visibility. That's something that people have indicated. Maybe people are too modest. So they're maybe a little bit reluctant to put themselves out there. So I've sort of taken this to heart. Of course, that's also something that will take more time to get people to recognize that it is helpful, and ultimately in everybody's interest, and certainly in the individual's interest, to put yourself out there. And for example, during the anniversary celebration we had on Tuesday, we had Emily and Caitlin from either Human Ecology, Communications, or Central talk about how do you communicate your research. So how do you communicate to well, different type of audiences through different types of media? So just to make people aware that this is an important part of what we need to do, because ultimately, you know, yeah, it's great to have your work published, and that's important for your academic career. But for the bigger picture, it's important that our work also lands in other areas or in other types of situations, and becomes part of sort of people's knowledge base, essentially. So, well, last but not least, and this is something that I'm still getting slowly my feet wet into, which is the teaching part. So as Cornell, I mean, teaching is, of course, one of our primary responsibilities, or probably our primary responsibility, and it has been for a very long time. And also through my previous job, I mean, I see myself as a teacher at heart, or sort of it's very close to my own personal interests and beliefs, but certainly also of the division. And we have an important task in ensuring that we continue to provide a fantastic experience to our undergraduates and also our graduate students through the three majors that we currently provide: nutritional sciences, human biology, health and society, and global and public health sciences. We have a dietetics program, both at the undergraduate and then, of course, for now the master level. And then, of course, we have a lot of graduate students, who I already referred to before. And with that, I would like to close. Hope I've given you a little bit of a glimpse of who I am, what my ideas are. Maybe the question that I didn't answer, but I mean, somebody could raise that question, but I'll get ahead of you. Like, why did I want to do this, right? I mean, it's a more personal question. And I've gotten that question a lot, so I'm happy to to be proactive in that sense. But yeah, for me, I mean, personally, I felt this was a fantastic experience or opportunity actually to come back to Cornell in this role. I had a great time here as a grad student. Always felt that connection, have kept that connection to Cornell. And when this opportunity arose, I mean, yeah, it felt like this was to me, it felt like a marriage made in heaven. I didn't tell that to my wife, but she's actually a Cornell graduate, so she would have agreed. Um, um, so because of our shared history here, yeah, Cornell is a natural fit, and I've at the same time there are tremendous opportunities here to further continue the legacy of the division, and as I said, been 50 great years, and I see it as my role to ensure that that will continue to be successful over the next decades or however long I will be allowed to stay. So yeah, that gives a little bit of an insight into why I'm here and why I came back. So with that, well, thanks for joining, and yeah, I mean, we still have plenty of time for questions. So
Thank you so much, Dr. Kersten. Are there questions in the audience? You can just raise your hand and I'll run over with the mic. Yeah, please.
Thank you for the presentation. So I'm an MD and PhD. So before I came to Cornell, I was in Cornell for 15 years. And most of the time I was in the lab because like we were doing clinical research with the residents and fellows. That's the reason why I enjoy so much. We have fantastic students, undergrads, graduate students here. And I shift my focus from immunology into the nutrition science, and I liked it very, very much. So my question is, is there any regular like a gathering for the students and the faculty together to talk about the science, more like a fire pit or how to call it? Fireside talks. Yeah, more relaxing way instead of like 70-30, which is mandatory for them to give a presentation, very formal situation. So just like they have a beer, some music, and then talk about life, about their concerns or something. Yeah.
Well, what we're certainly now, I think Laura is organizing this as part of the onboarding for sort of to have faculty talk to certainly the junior graduate students about, well, sort of the experience and what's ahead. I think ultimately what you mean, well, one thing that we are organizing, actually reorganizing at the division level is a division day. And Meng is in the back of the room. He organized the previous one before I arrived, but we just decided to organize a new one on May 8th. So this will be an example of a whole day where we will have, that's actually really the purpose, to have a more informal interaction between everybody, including graduate students, faculty, and staff. On the one hand, talk about science in a nice setting, at the same time get to know each other better through some other activities, which we're still trying to figure out what those will be, but we just decided, but we're already making a head start. So that's one example of something that we could or that we're organizing at the level of the whole division. At the same time, of course, maybe in smaller groups. I mean, every day I'm passing with the bus what's the bar? The former bar, the chapter house. There's no more chapter house. I pass it every day and it's empty. It's like that was the place where you would go after work and with your colleagues and have a beer and talk about this kind of stuff. So I'm wondering, are there still places like that? It seems that a few of these places are gone. I'm not saying DNS should take over the chapter house and start serving beer. Don't misinterpret. But yeah, we need to be on the lookout for the right settings to foster that type of interaction. Yeah.
Hi. So I get that, there's lots of really great things about Ithaca. But I guess one of the limitations is, we haven't got like a big hospital on site or anything like that. So I'm not suggesting you build a big hospital. But I was wondering if do you have any ideas about, maybe ways to, increase collaboration with the people in DNS with, for example, the people down at Weil in New York or anything along those sorts of lines.
Right, right. Well, I think there's been some, I think quite a few of our faculty are currently in New York for there's various symposia being organized this fall, especially in the middle and child area, where we really are interacting with these faculty. I think there is quite a bit ongoing already, and we also had the symposium last year, this bi-yearly symposium on well, I think I intended it in September to really get to know each other better. I think that's, of course, the first step. Before you can collaborate, you need to know who that other person is, right? So I think it's important that we keep fostering that so that we know who's out there, we know what our shared interests are, and then use that as a basis to start a collaboration. At the same time, I feel the facility that we have here in-house, of course, we're not going to have patients, right? At least people may have some ailment, but we're not going to have severely diseased patients because that's just not the setting. Nonetheless, through this facility, we do have access to blood drawings, to biopsies. So I think as we hopefully make this facility more important, it also allows us to do more. And actually that would be my dream. That would be the ideal scenario, that we can make this facility a centralized facility for all human-based, more invasive research on this campus, which it more or less is, but that it's in that sense more recognized, more visible, and that will be to our benefit as well. So yeah, I hope that answers your question to some extent.
Well, there is a question online.
So this question comes from Kersten. First, she says, thanks for sharing the remarkable history of DNS. Can you speak to current or hoped for connections to other expertise within the College of Human Ecology? How might we spark new collaborations?
Well, I think especially also in the social and behavioral studies on nutrition. I mean, they've always been very much, I think, connected to what's ongoing in the college. Tashara is of course, I guess, a perfect example with her work. So I think that's great, and yeah, we can use that as an example. And again, I think the recruitment here is key. So I'm hoping to find more people that are active in that area, that can further sort of literally give body to that shared interest, because I feel that's where most of the overlap is, and certainly also with the Book Center. Yeah.
Beautiful. We have time for one, maybe two more questions.
Yeah, great talk. Coming from the perspective of an undergrad majoring in nutrition, I wanted to ask, after being a PhD here and serving on higher administration for so many years, what makes Cornell education what makes this institution so good to get an education from? And has that perspective changed after serving as the chair and the director of DNS?
Yeah, great question. Yes, certainly what I can say is what I really recognize is the academic rigor here. I'm going to say some funny things, but you'll recognize what I mean. When I walk home at 5:30 on Friday and walk through the physical sciences building, there's tons of students out there. And on the one hand, I want to tell them, kids, go home, have fun. But they don't, they work. I mean, it's that spirit of that energy of labor and ambition. At the same time, they need to, because the courses are demanding. So that we ask that of them, to be this dedicated. So we put the bar high, and that as a former student here, I found that very inspirational to really go deep. And that's what Cornell really provides, is that sort of that intellectual environment, that hopefully pushes people to new heights in discovering where their limits are intellectually, and at least like I said, that I've experienced personally, and that's something that not all institutions do. I mean, certainly there are, equivalent institutions in the US, but not certainly across the world. It is not necessarily like that. So I think that is inspiring, but also, I mean, it means that our graduates are well equipped, because they didn't get it easy. Let's put it that way. So yeah.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kersten. Thank you all for coming.